Welcome to High Stakes, episode 30. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. High Stakes is produced by Mike Lawrence. You can find him on Twitter at Awesemo. And our guest today is DK. You can find him on Twitter at DK__DFS. On DraftKings, he is Comandera. You probably know him as one of the best DFS tilters in the game. He's always tweeting out mad about something, some player underperforming or overperforming, some chalk player overperforming. DK is frequently on Twitter talking about how the plays are going. He's also a content creator for several different sports and different platforms on YouTube, on Patreon. He has a lot of different places that he's doing content. He creates great content. I've watched a lot of it. DK, how are you doing today?
Neil, thanks for having me on. Yeah, excited to be on and talk a little DFS, talk some background, and yeah, if you guys want to follow me on Twitter, you can always do so. We'll be tilting bad chalk, good chalk, all that good stuff. So
yeah, and I should read it. It's at DK__DFS.
Two underscores. Yeah.
Somebody had already taken the at DK_DFS. I take it.
Yep, and then there's like 20 DK DFSs as well. That's a story for another time. But yeah, DK__DFS.
Interesting. Okay, actually, I'll start there. I wasn't planning on it, but it just occurred to me. Eric Most, one of the previous guests on this show, Need Lunch Money on DraftKings, asked how long did it take him to come up with that username. He was joking, but is DK a DraftKings reference, or is that like your initials? Was it how'd you come up with at DK_DFS?
Yeah, so my initials, DK, and then so a lot of people think it was from DraftKings, but it's my initials. And then when I created the Twitter account, DKDFS was taken and DK_DFS was taken. So I was like, well, I guess I'm going with two underscores.
Yeah, it just looks like it's like a generic, like at DK_DFS. Doesn't really stand out because, I see that and I just think DraftKings DFS, whatever. And obviously Eric was thinking the same thing. That's funny. I do want to ask you right away about that hat. People probably can't see it. You wear your hat a little bit higher on your head than I do. I guess you probably got better hairline than I do, so you were had a little higher. That is similar to I've got a very similar XFL hat. When did you get this XFL hat?
So it was when the season rebooted in 2020, and played XFL DFS for, what was it, 5 weeks? Had a lot of fun doing so. Excited for the new season. Hopefully they have good contests for it. But yeah, I was a big XFL fan before I got shut down for COVID, so that's why I got the hat.
Were you around and/or an XFL fan back in the 90s when it was going on, or are you just a newfound 2020 XFL fan?
Yeah, so I was pretty young when it first started. So I think I remember watching like the first game. I think I was like 6 years old or something. So I remember when it first started, but I definitely didn't watch all the games. I think I only watched 1 or 2 games. So more so fan when it rebooted, and then hopefully going to be watching most of the games this season as well.
Yeah, I actually don't remember it from the 90s. Like I know that it was a thing. I'm guessing I'm a little bit older than you, so I was, old enough that I could have watched it, but don't really remember it from the 90s. Definitely got into it more with the DFS in 2020. One other thing that I wanted to ask you about right away, because it's right at the top of your Twitter profile, you were Paris Hilton tweeted about you and told people to go to your page. How do you know Paris Hilton? What's the connection there?
Yeah, that is something that I constantly get asked, because people are like, what is that connection? That makes no sense at all. But so the background is my ex-girlfriend's cousin actually married Paris Hilton. Oh. So that's how I knew her. And so I hung out with her a good amount, like whenever there's like family get-togethers. And that was her Christmas gift to me, was the shout out on Twitter. So
that's hilarious. That's a great
Christmas gift. She's pretty cool. She's a little bit more quiet in person, but really nice. And so that was a shout out, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. So I'll just pin it to my profile.
Definitely seems like a different person than we thought of her as being, 20 years ago. Now, I know I don't follow Paris Hilton very closely, I'll be honest, but she's very much in the NFT space now. Seems to kind of understand what's going on. Seems more mature than we probably gave her credit for back in the day. But that's a very cool Christmas present to get that shout out. All right. So we talked about the tilting a little bit. People have started tweeting at you whenever they are tilting, whenever they're mad about something, people tweet at you. What's that like? Do you enjoy those interactions with people who are just like,
I would say,
okay, this guy sucks? How do you like that?
you originally brought it up, and then I was like, people tag me like every single day. To be honest, I love it. I think people are hilarious when they tag me in their tilt tweets because it's just so relatable, right? We all go through it, and yeah, I personally love it. I've seen it every day, whether it be in YouTube comments or on Twitter. So the more the merrier. If you guys want to tag me and you're like frustrated about it, a player, let me know because I think it's really really funny.
Okay, but what do you do if you disagree with them? If somebody's like, "Yeah, DK, this guy totally sucks. He was a terrible play and he's going off," and you're like, "No, he's a great play and I played him." What do you do in that case?
Well, I'll just be like, I still like it. Like I'm like, if I disagree with someone and they're tilting, it's like it is what it is. I'll still be like, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I'm on the other side, but I still think it's hilarious, and I'm not going to be like, I'm not going to start an argument because I'm like, oh, I disagree with you now.
Okay, and so much of your energy and time seems to be spent, tilting on Twitter. What do you do when you're just winning though? Like if you're just like your players are all doing well, you're winning money. What do you do then?
Yeah. So that's another good question. If I'm pretty quiet about a slate, if you don't see much from me throughout the night, that usually means it's a pretty good sign.
All right.
So that, and same with YouTube too. Like if I have a winning night, I'll like cover it for like 20, 30 seconds and move on. If something really bad happens, some bad shot goes off, you're hearing about it for like 10 minutes and you're obviously going to hear me rant about it on Twitter. So
Okay.
usually if I'm having a good night, I'm pretty quiet on Twitter.
Okay. Yep. That makes sense. You like tweeting when you're mad about something and don't really feel the need to tweet when you're winning. Okay. I get
Exactly. Yeah.
that. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about your background. It's how I usually start these shows, talking a little background. And I just usually like to start. What kind of background do you have in statistics? Do you have any formal or informal statistics training?
Yeah, so I was econ major in college, so I had some statistics classes, but that was about it. So nothing like crazy. I want to say maybe 2 or 3 statistics classes, but yeah, I never took anything like advanced with that. So
Okay. Well, that's a little bit of a background, and then computer programming. Same question: do you have any formal or informal training in computer programming?
I don't. I know a
Okay.
lot of people in DFS do, but that's not something that I ever really got into at all. So
Okay. Makes sense. And then just more into your professional background. We actually got a listener question from Jonathan Rupert asks, do you do DFS full time? And if not, what is your day job now?
yeah, so when I first moved to Chicago, I had a day job. I worked for a financial software company and liked my coworkers there, but the job itself was something that I didn't really enjoy. And then I started doing DFS full time in the summer of 2021. So now it's been about a year and a half since I've been doing this full time. And I think it was the best decision I ever made. So yeah.
Okay. Both DFS and of course DFS content. I mean, you're doing your content constantly, so it's not you don't have to entirely rely on just DFS
Right.
profits. You can also make money doing content. What about okay? So tell me about prior to that. Tell me about your professional. I guess you just did tell me a little bit about your professional background. Anything else that's relevant to DFS or any related hobbies prior to starting DFS full time?
Yeah. So one thing that I don't think I've ever even brought up on my channel was I was really big into chess back in the day, like when I was really young. So kindergarten through 4th grade, I like did tournaments like all over Michigan. And I was the champion of Michigan 2nd and 3rd grade. So like I was
Wow.
pretty good at chess when I was really young, but I gave that up because I just preferred like playing sports. And that was definitely something I regret because I don't know, I love chess. I loved like playing it, and it's somewhat similar to DFS because it's all about thinking what your opponent's going to do. So yeah, that was I think like having that chess background definitely did help me a little bit with getting into DFS.
It's a pretty
Um,
common background.
yeah, but I definitely regret it because I don't know where I could have been if I kept playing chess, but yeah, unfortunately I gave it up for sports back in the day. So
Okay, so I'm not even going to bother asking you if you could beat Chess Liam. That's where I was going to go, just see, try to set up a match between you and Chess Liam. But it sounds like you've been kind of out of the loop. Um,
yeah, I play maybe a couple times a year now, so he would
okay,
kill me if we
okay.
played.
And I think actually Eric He Most was also a chess player. It's a pretty common theme among great DFS players. Makes sense. I mean, if you love a good puzzle, some game theory, you're also playing
Mhm.
against other people a little bit competitive. Kind of makes sense that that if you were somebody who was really into chess, that you'd also get into DFS. So makes sense there. Um, Approximately when did you start getting involved with DFS, and what drew you in?
Yeah, so I think it was 2012 or 2013 when I first started playing. I was, I think, a sophomore in college. And my friend, when he originally told me about it, I was like, oh, this is perfect. And this is for me. Like, I was like a kid in a candy store. I was like, oh, this is like so exciting. I loved it. And because I was always big into sports, big into gambling, and I was like, this is perfect for me. So started, yeah, back in the day, and obviously the competition was a lot softer back then, but that's when I started, and yeah, I've been enjoying it ever since, really. So
Well, that's a long time. I did not realize that you had been playing for so long. That's like over, you've been playing for over a decade. That's I mean, probably one of the earlier DFS players who's still active. I've also been playing approximately that long. So one of the OGs. Were you a winning player right away?
I would say no, not right away, but it didn't take me too long because I mean, like if as long as you just did like a little bit of research back then, you could be profitable. And I was kind of following the strategy back then that was pretty common of like 80% cash games, 20% GPP.
Okay.
So I was mainly a cash game player actually back then. I don't play cash at all now, but yeah, it took me a little bit, but then once I would say maybe 6 months or so, then I kind of got the feel for it. And I still wasn't like a great player back then, but the field was so much softer that as long as you knew what you're doing a little bit, I feel like you could make money.
Yeah, same boat here. I was not a winning player right away, so no shame in that. There are just some real sharks out there winning the GPPs, playing at that time 500 entries in a contest and just sweeping the board. The con. Do you remember Condia?
I do. Yeah. I remember him. I remember like all the DFS OGs. I think when I first started, I actually played MLB, which I don't play now. And
Funny.
I want to say, like, I first started, I was like, I did a $1 contest. I won. Then I did like a $5 or a $10 contest. I won. I was like, oh, this is easy. Like, this is, come on. I can do the high stakes. I think I did like a $25 one and then lost. I was like, well, that was a mistake. I got in a little bit over my head.
Yeah, that's a tough sport, and some of those OGs really were ahead of their time. Just having things like projections that they use, good projections, was basically what it took to win back then. And of course, I didn't have that. I think a lot of us did not have access to those projections,
Yeah. I
but
don't even think there was like any projections or ownership or anything for a while.
not publicly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe they were somewhere, but I did not know about them. Was did not have access to them. So yeah, could have been ahead of our time if we had just found those projections, figured out how to make them on our own early on. But I guess we missed that boat. We have to play a little bit more game theory. Uh, in which sport or sports do you have the biggest edge in DFS?
Yes, that's a good question. For me, it's the more niche sports. So the preseason NBA, NFL, and the summer league. That's actually where I go. That's where I have my most action. It's stressful because it's a lot of looking for info on Twitter and constantly updating and constantly looking for stuff. But those are the sports actually where I've had my most success, and that's where I get my most action down as well.
And I would assume then XFL falls into that bucket as well. So that's we talked about it a little bit, I think, before
Mhm.
the show that we're both pretty excited about it, but also just really hope that they have big contests because it's pretty similar to those other. Would you agree with that? That it's similar to like preseason or I don't know, other niche kind of sports, just in that the projections maybe aren't as good. It really is more like news based. You really have to be scouring Twitter.
100%. Yeah, that's why I'm really hoping they have decent sized contests. Because like I would like to cover it, but if the contests are really small, I don't think it would be worth it. So yeah, I really hope they do have good sized contests. Because when they started back in 2020, it was 100K to first.
Right, I know. I won
Yeah.
one of those. Yeah, it was those were the days. I'm guessing we're not going to see that. I'm really hopeful that we do get those 100K to first, but I'll be if they're just 50K to first, I would take that. I'd be kind of pleasantly surprised if we get some 50K to first XFL contests. But I guess we'll see. And who knows if FanDuel is even going to do them? I know DraftKings is going to have something for XFL, but I don't even know if we can count on FanDuel necessarily even having contests. I guess we'll see.
Did FanDuel have them for the 2020 season?
That was actually the one that I won was on
Oh,
FanDuel.
okay.
And they did
Okay.
so as DraftKings would do the full weekend slates, or it'd be all 4 games.
Mhm.
FanDuel would break it up Saturday and Sunday, just 2 game slates, which was pretty interesting. A lot of obviously duplication was a big thing in those 2 game slates because everybody just basically played whoever had done well the week before, and it was
Right.
kind of an issue. But yeah, they had it. Not confident they're going to have it again this year, but we'll see. Um, let's talk a little bit of process for, and maybe we can talk about different sports as well. But
Mhm.
just starting with some general question. Do you do any simulations or use simulations from outside sources as part of your process at all?
I don't know. My process is relatively simple. Like I don't do a ton because I'm a single entry player.
Right.
So my content more so is based around game theory. So
Yep.
I don't really make any projections or run simulations. Heavily game theory focus for sure.
Okay. Cool. And I guess then your handle, you're not even using an optimizer.
No, yeah, I'm building one lineup, which is I mean, I've always wanted to build 150. Like I've always wanted to try MMA. But I do a stream before lock every single day for my Patreon. So I feel like if I was to do MME, it would kind of be unfair for those people because like if late news came out and I would be like had to recrunch, like I don't want to do that for like half the stream. So I just
Sure.
one lineup is easier for me because I can still make some changes and if we get late news while still like answering questions and all that. So yeah,
It's
that's the main
definitely,
reason I don't MME, even though I've always wanted to.
yeah. As somebody who has MME'd while doing live before lock shows, I gotta say it is not fun. It definitely adds an element of stress, and I do focus on the show more so than my lineups generally, but then it's to the detriment of my lineups. I definitely don't do as well on those slates, so I think that makes sense if you're doing
Exactly.
live.
I feel like if I was to do it, I would still focus more on, the show itself and answer questions, but then I'll be like, all right, well, I definitely made some mistakes
In the
here.
back of your mind, you're trying to, yeah, it's a tough balance for sure. It makes sense to not MME if you are, doing a live stream before lock. I think you said that you do not do anything with projections at all either.
No, yeah, I don't make my own projections or simulations or anything.
Okay, and what about ownership projections? Do you, look at other sites for ownership projections, or just listen around the industry? How do you get an idea about
Yeah,
ownership?
so I do look at ownership projections this year. I actually didn't previous to that. I kind of would just like listen around the industry just to get a general idea. But now I do look at ownership and a couple different sites just to get a general idea. But that's really the only thing that I'll use. Other than that, it's just like hand building and process and game theory.
Okay, and how much does ownership play a role for you in creating your lineups?
I would say ownership plays a pretty big role. I would say Um, everything is relative, but yeah, I would say ownership definitely plays a pretty big role. I know some people not as much, but for me, like if it's a wide enough gap, between players where one player projects a little bit better, but the other one's like way lower owned, I'm just gonna go for the lower owned one. So yeah.
I kind of had a feeling because that's, oftentimes what you're tilting is the players who are very highly owned, maybe that we think are over owned,
Mhm.
doing well, right? So it's part of your tilt process as well as
Yeah.
looking at the players who come in at high ownership.
It's the yeah, like the one example was I don't know if you played this slate, the Saban Lee slate like a week ago, where he was projected to start, did not start, and was still like 70% owned. And it was looking like he was going to DNP because Dwayne Washington checked in before him. He
Yeah.
didn't even play in the first quarter. And then, because I faded him, I pivoted off him. I was like, I think this ownership's going to be too high. Pivoted off him, looking like he was going to DNP. Dwayne Washington played so bad that he got benched. Saban Lee came in and smashed off the bench and went for like 30 fancy points.
Well, that was the whole theory behind the play, is that the starter was going to fail and Saban Lee. No,
Yeah, everyone knew Dwayne Washington was going to get benched and Saban Lee was
Yeah,
going to
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is some tough luck, and those are the most tilting when like people got there on bad process, but then it works out anyway. I think that is, I'm with you. That is the most tilting type of outcome. I don't remember. I think I had some Saban Lee in that game. I don't know how much I had, but that's I understand being tilted by that kind of thing. Would you call yourself an exploitative player? Like, do you look at how ownership where you think other people are going to be in terms of ownership, and then play like above the field, like more than you think a player should be? I guess you're only playing one lineup, so maybe that's maybe it's a tougher question in terms of looking at percentages of how much you play. But do you think you are trying to exploit the field's mistakes when you're creating lineups?
Yeah, definitely. I would say a little bit more so maybe for like late swap situations, questionable players, but definitely, yeah, I think so. Like I think one of the bigger edges still in DFS is when you have those questionable players in the late game. Um, if like people are not willing to leave flexibility or like give yourself that chance to, if this player's out, then we can get this player. I always look at it like, what's the ceiling? Like worst comes to worst, I'm going to lose my entry fees, and that's okay because I lose most nights playing GPPs. I always look at it like what is the upside here? Like for example, Memphis the other day when Ja was questionable,
Yep.
and you have a pretty clear beneficiary in Tyus Jones if he gets ruled out. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to risk it and get to Tyus Jones, even though Tyus Jones that day ended up coming at relatively high ownership still.
Seemed like everybody projected for Ja to be out, which is definitely
Yeah,
not expected. But it seemed like across
right.
the industry, everybody was kind of doing the same thing.
I think he was more 50-50 that day. I guess a better example would be the 76ers on Saturday when Embiid and Harden were both questionable, and that was the late game, and we didn't
Okay.
get that news until all the
Yep.
other games started.
Yep.
So then I got like Maxi and Tobias and Melton at like really, really low ownership. So that's one thing I talk about a lot in my stream is I love it when we have questionable players in the late
Oh yeah.
game because I think it's a pretty big edge. Late swap. People don't late swap correctly.
Yeah, absolutely with you. That is the biggest edge in DFS. And I got to say, like, as somebody who used to hand build and I would play 5 to 10 lineups per night, I was hesitant to late swap, back when I was a little bit more of a casual player, because you fall in love with your lineups, with the plays that you're making. And unless one of your players rule out, you're just like, you kind of want to roll with what you have. But definitely a mistake to not be late swapping, taking advantage of these things as they come up. Of course, easier when you have good projections and stuff, and late swap ability and stuff. But yeah, I'm with you. Definitely something that is underutilized by the field. Hey guys, let me take a minute away from this conversation with DK to tell you that we have a great offer for new users only. You can get full access to everything Stokastic has to offer for NFL for 5 days free. Projections, ownership, 1v1 tools, lineup generator, top stacks tool, zero risk because it's all free. So sign up now using the link in the description of this video. Note that Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on and that can be added after the fact. How about avoiding being duplicated by other players? Is that a big part of your strategy in any type of contest? So just avoiding lineup duplication.
Yeah, so single entry, yes. I mean, I play a little bit more contrarian, so I'm like, I know people are not going to really dupe me in single entry. But if I'm playing the big field contests like showdowns and I only have one lineup in there, that is something I like absolutely prioritize. Like, I do not want to be duped. Like, I'm not going to build a dumb lineup, but also like I want that first place equity. So yeah, like especially like showdowns, I'll be way more willing to leave salary on the table or play a little bit more of a contrarian captain. Whereas if I'm playing just my single entry tournaments, I don't really care as much just because I'm still playing some chalk, but I know like I'm not playing like a cash game lineup in a tournament, so I know I'm not going to be duped there.
Yeah, I think that's generally my thought as well. Like, there are obviously, showdown is probably the best example. The one you just gave is those contests you run into a lot of duplication if you're not actively trying to avoid it, because any lineup that uses close to the full salary, people are going to be probably using that lineup, with some exceptions. You can find some that are not as well, but yeah, definitely those are the types of contests for me where I have to focus a little bit more on avoiding being duplicated. Once your lineups are in, and I think I know the answer to this question based on your Twitter tilting, but do you sweat the games?
Yeah, I mean, I usually don't like watching the games, especially if I know I'm gonna have a good night. I'll just kind of keep an eye on it on my phone. But if like I'll watch games here and there, but more so I like to try to keep my mind off things and like try to do something else while the games are going on. Obviously, while still keeping an eye on news. So I would say kind of like sweating it, kind of don't. Obviously I have to keep an eye up until like the late game starts. Once like the late game starts, then I'll kind of just like put my phone away for a bit. So I guess like here and there, I'll like to sweat, but as you said, I don't really like watching the games while it's going on and while I have a lot of action on it.
Okay, interesting. I think I initially started playing for the purpose of because I'm going to be watching the games and it's going to make it more enjoyable for me. Yeah, it's a good question whether it actually adds to that enjoyment or takes away from it.
I would say for football, like for the showdowns, I'll watch the football games for sure. But
Oh yeah,
for NBA, yeah, I usually don't watch the games unless it's like just like the late game at the end or something. I'll try to keep my mind off things and do other stuff.
okay. All right, and just I just want to talk briefly about your NBA process in particular. So NBA, when does the process start of like looking at the games, looking at the players, and what is involved in your NBA process? What leads to your lineup decisions?
Yeah, so my process actually begins the night before because that's when I'll make a video breaking down the slate the next day. So that's when I get kind of just the first look lineup out there for YouTube. And then wake up, I'll watch some content around the industry just to get general idea of kind of what everyone's doing. Usually I'll watch Stokastic, I'll watch the strategy show. And then I will, kind of keep an eye on news, update my stuff for Patreon, and then do my live stream before lock. So kind of just like throughout the day, I'm keeping an eye on stuff, seeing what the industry is doing, and obviously keep an eye on news, updating from there, and then finalize everything in the live stream.
Does it ever feel like wasted time with NBA just because so much comes down to that late breaking news? Or I mean, I guess you can't really know going in whether there is going to be late breaking news, so it's kind of worth spending that time anyway.
Yeah, I mean, definitely like you waste time because it's like I always feel like I never try to build my lineup either until like right before I get on my stream because I think it's kind of pointless because most of the news comes out like an hour before lock or things that just completely change the slate. Like last night, for example, I was like, I need this Denver news. I can't even build my lineup without knowing what's going on. So I was like, I'm playing TJ McConnell, and that's it because I need to see what else is going on, what
Yeah.
Denver's doing. So a lot of NBA content is like what I make the night before. It's just kind of completely pointless up until like it doesn't mean anything until when the slate's starting. So yeah, usually with NBA DFS, all the line decisions, all the important stuff is right around lock or even after lock.
But still maybe helpful to spend that time kind of get an idea of which options are out there, have a preconceived idea of like where a player is going to rank if they do come into play with injury, that kind of thing. So yeah, still probably worthwhile, at least definitely worthwhile because you are creating content about it too. But even without the content, maybe worthwhile to look at it a little bit. All right, I want to get into a few listener questions. The first one, I'll start here. A couple people on Twitter said that you had blocked them on Twitter. They said it was because they disagreed with one of your opinions that you probably while you're tilting one of your opinions, they disagreed with something you said, and according to them, that led to a block. So I wanted to ask you, what is your blocking policy on Twitter?
Yeah, so I really don't block that many people. I would say the main reason if I block someone is harassment. So I saw that person that replied to you. He was in my Discord a while ago, just kind of harassed people for a bit. I asked him nicely, like, can you not do that? Kept doing it. So I was like, okay, like, come on, man, I gotta remove you. And then kept harassing me on Twitter. So that's really the main thing. As long as you're not doing anything crazy, like I'm not gonna block you. If you like, disagree with a take or something, that's totally fine. But if it's just like the nonstop, like after like every tweet, then it's like, okay, then I'm gonna block you. The thing that I mentioned at the beginning of the show was one guy created like 15 burner accounts and then like nonstop was just like tweeting about me. So that was one I was like, all right, man, like you have anything better to do? Like, come on.
Right.
So
At that point, just get a life, man.
it all started too with it was really dumb. It started because he said that Chris Paul was worse off in DFS with Devin Booker off the court. I was like, that's just not true.
That's just obviously wrong.
And
Yeah.
I said something along the lines of, hey, you want to enter my contest tonight, and he got really mad about that, and then he made like 15 burners. So
So you actually know who it is. It's not like some mystery person. You know.
Well,
who
it
it is.
was. I mean, I don't know. Like, it's like his original Twitter account is like just some like random account. I don't know like who he is, but yeah, if you search like DK DFS at Twitter, there's going to be like 20 accounts that pop up. So
Yeah, that's really funny. Yeah, it's always funny people who have these opinions based on like one time they played Chris Paul when Devin Booker was out and he didn't do well. So therefore, Chris Paul is actually worse when Devin Booker is. I was like, no, we have the data. Like you can actually look at the data. We can tell you.
That's what I showed him too. I was like, here's here's the data. Like Chris Paul is clearly better with Devin Booker off the court, but he had one game this year, I think, with Devin Booker off that he like didn't perform well, and like he was just like, no, this is the end all be all. He's worse off. I'm like, okay.
Okay, along those lines, would you ever like X a player out? Like a player, are there players who have disappointed you so many times that you're not willing to play them under any circumstances?
No, I'll never X out someone. Like I don't care if they burn me 100 times. I'll go back. Like as long as it's a good play on paper, and like they're like, I guess one example for that would be Jaren Jackson Jr. in the playoffs last year. He was a guy that was just getting in foul trouble every single game, and he was like low owned. And I kept telling people, I'm like, I like him in tournaments. Like one of these games, he's going to avoid foul trouble and have a really good game. And he got in foul trouble for like 8 or 9 straight games. So it was like a huge letdown. Finally, the 10th game, he avoided foul trouble and smashed for me. And I was like, this is what I was trying to say, right? Like, so like, I don't care if the players burn me 100 times. Like, no, I'll never X them out.
You got to have a short memory in DFS. It's funny because I say that and I'm like, well, you got to have a short memory. You also have to have a long memory. You just have to have like a good, I guess, understanding of like what probability is, I guess. Like just because somebody burned you once doesn't mean they're going to continue to burn you. Just because somebody smashed for you once doesn't mean they're going to smash every game. Just I don't know. People are so emotional with their DFS lineups, and I know. I mean, you're a tilter, so you understand the emotion. I understand the emotion. I also originally created my DFS account for the sake of just tilting into the Twitter sphere. Before I turn it into my now professional account. So I get it.
There's a lot of people that do that in DFS, and more so I will say on prop betting. I don't know if you follow like any Twitter accounts there, but there's people that are like, all right, this guy's banned. He's burned me 3 times. We can't go there. So yeah, you should never do that. Never ban anyone, never X someone out, no matter how many times they burned you. It all comes down. Like each day is a different prop. Like, so yeah.
But you gotta love the people do it because it definitely helps us if other people are gonna be just Xing people out, not playing this guy. Of course, I don't really believe people when they say that. I think that everybody, they say that when they're feeling, strong emotions about a player after they've burned them, but they'll probably come back around. But in some ways, I hope they don't because it's obviously not a smart decision to X people out because they burn you once. Fantasy Fling asks, will you have some live lineups while we're recording the show? He wants to see you live tilt. So do you have any PGA going on right now?
No PGA for me. So that would have been good. Like we could have had a live sweat with the cut sweat, but no, I haven't been playing PGA really at all. I played a little bit when COVID first started because that was like the first sport that started back up. But yeah, no live sweat for me right now. I know people have like asked about that, like, oh, like, can you do a stream like at night for like a live sweat? So maybe it'll be something I do down the line. But
you mean for like NBA, for other sports?
Yeah, for other sports, like maybe bring on guests or like and be like, all right, like we're tilting the late night games or something.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, PGA not something that I have had much success at. So also something that I have large. I actually have a few lineups in the contest going on right now, but yeah, sometimes I think you just gotta stick to the sports that you're good at, and certainly not one for me. BP Colonia asks, how do you run so good?
So BP, he is actually someone that runs really good. He's in my Discord. He's an MME player. He's had a lot of success, but that's something that I always joke about, like running bad, like no one runs worse. It's kind of like a bit that I'll talk about a lot on Twitter and YouTube, and it's really a joke. Like it's just something that like I say it a lot. Jesse says it a lot on Twitter, but I know like there's people that do probably run worse, but that's something we'll talk about a lot with injuries or ejections or foul trouble or anything. So it's just kind of one of those things where yeah, I guess it's one of my go-tos on social media.
Well, I mean, It's Jesse's line is nobody runs worse. Do you believe, Jesse, that nobody runs worse than him?
I definitely do not agree with that because I've seen him run very good.
Me too.
He's won six figures twice in 1 week in NBA. So I would say he runs actually pretty good, not bad
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah, I think that Jesse runs fairly well. Jesse will never admit to it that he runs pretty
Mm-hmm.
well. I mean, he's a great player too. I'm not trying to say that he's just getting lucky, but you got to run pretty well to win some contests. And Jesse has won a lot over the years in many different sports. So I don't think that he runs too badly. We all obviously we can complain day to day. The reason we don't win every day is because we have bad luck. But yeah, Jesse certainly has his fair share of wins. Okay, Bob Jam 23 asks, what do you do for fun outside of DFS?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, when I do leave the apartment, when I touch grass, which is pretty rare, I don't go out a lot, but I like going to concerts, live music, or just hanging out with friends and watching sports. So a lot of my life still just revolves around sports, even when I'm having fun. Going to games or just watching games. So live music and just hanging out with friends would be probably the two things I do the most when I'm trying to have fun outside of DFS.
What kind of music? Any concerts coming up?
Yeah, so I'm more so into EDM, but I kind of like all music. So concerts coming up, I don't have anything planned. More so in the summer when it's warm. So I'm in Chicago right now.
Oh, you're
So
in Chicago. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So I'll go to like some festivals in the summer and stuff. But right now it's like 20 degrees. So yeah, not doing a ton right now. No shows upcoming.
I don't remember if we talked about this. Are you from Illinois originally, or is this a temporary stop or a new home for you?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Michigan.
Okay.
That's where I grew up, and then I moved here 2019. So I got like 1 year of Chicago pre-COVID, which was kind of cool. So I got to experience what it was like here before COVID.
Yeah.
But yeah, I plan to be in Chicago at least for a few more years.
Okay.
So yeah.
And not too far from Michigan. My brother lives in Ann Arbor. What part of Michigan are you from?
Okay. Bloomfield Hills area.
Okay.
That's like yeah. It's
If you
like
if you had said Ann Arbor, I'd say, oh, I've been there. But other than Ann
yeah.
Arbor, there's nowhere you're going to say that I was going to.
It's like I think like 30 minutes outside of Detroit suburb. So
Okay.
my parents still live there, so I'll still like come home like a lot. I'll just take the train. So
Okay. I have been to Detroit once or twice, so I'm familiar with
okay.
Detroit a little bit of as a city. Um, Ali asks, why do you play single entry instead of MME? You kind of already answered this, and it's because you do shows. Is that as much of an answer as it is?
Yeah, I would say that's really the main reason is I do the live shows before lock, and I don't think if I was to MME that I could give out the best possible content and focus on people that sign up for my stuff. So that's really the main reason. Maybe one day I'll try it out, but yeah, for now it's just going to be single entry, which is I think even more tilting as a DFS player because you got to make those really tough decisions. And I feel like if I ever make like a 2v2 swap, it never goes well. So yeah, for now, it's just going to be single entry stuff for that main reason.
Do you ever think about just playing like five lineups? Just because, as you said, it can be more tilting. Just because,
Mm-hmm.
in some cases, I mean, you have to make decisions where it's like, I really like this guy, but he's not going to make it into my one lineup. Like some player who's going completely unowned. Because I used to play like five lineups at a time, and even then, I would be very upset. Like, I really love this player. I couldn't get him into my lineup. He's going off at like 1% owned.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever think about just upping it just a little bit to like 5, 10 entries?
I have. I mean, I built like two lineups before if I'm ever like really really torn, but probably wouldn't do just like 5 to 10 because then I feel like it would still be a disadvantage for me if I'm playing against like 150 people, and and I don't know if like I would just like enter all those into like single entry stuff. So probably I've thought about it, just building a few more, but I think just gonna stick with the one for now.
Okay. And do you enter your one lineup into many different contests or just one contest?
Yeah, so I will enter the big tournament every now, whatever like the $15,
Yep.
$10 tournament. I'll enter that, and then I'll enter some single entry tournaments. That's mainly what I'll do, and then I'll enter like the showdown and the late slate. But single entry for sure is what I focus on, and then I'll always throw a lineup in the big tournament just in case. Just in
Because if it
case.
does go completely off, you don't want to regret not being in that
Exactly.
contest.
I will never, I do not want to have that regret no matter what. So, like, no matter what I'm playing, I'm always going to enter the big tournament just in case I have the nuts. So,
Yep. Me too.
But
I
one lineup,
don't.
like just in case, it's a dart throw.
Yeah, I don't understand how people do it, where they'll enter a lineup where it's like, I only have this lineup in a contest that's $5,000 to first. Most of my entries are in $100,000 to first contest. I'm like, at that point, I would just repeat the lineups in multiple different contests rather than. I just never want to have the regret of this lineup that I made was awesome. I had the nuts and I entered it in the wrong contest. So
I've heard so many nightmare stories about that where people are like, oh, like I would have won the 100K, but I only entered this $5 tournament, or I only entered this one tournament, or like my, I don't know, cash game lineup would have won it or something. So I always say, like, always throw your lineup in the big tournament no matter what, just in case you have the nuts.
Yep, I'm with you. That's I don't know. I couldn't handle it. Okay, we got one more listener question.
Okay.
And this is a fun one. Bayesian Test System asks, please ask him for a power ranking, top 3 or 5 of DFS tilters on Twitter. You're allowed to include yourself on the list if you choose. So can you give me 5 best DFS tilters, or if not 5, at least 3 or 4?
Ooh, that's a tough one. So I would say probably me and Jesse would be at the top, just because maybe there is someone else that tilts all the time, but I think we're the most consistent with it on Twitter. Tilting bad chalk or whatever it is. So I would say me and Jesse are probably 1, 2. Jake Anderson, I would say, would probably be number 3. He's a guy that always has some good tilts as well. And then I don't see anyone else that's like really consistent with it. If people are more consistent on Twitter with it, then I'll add them to the power rankings. But right now, I think that's where it would be. So you want to get your tilt game up and get to the top of the list, got to be more consistent with it. So any viewers out there, let me know. If you show me consistency, we'll add you to the list.
What does it take to be a great tilter?
I think just that's a good question. I would say, the tilting the bad chalk for one, and then just having some funny stories about like, oh, you finally fade this person and he goes off, or I've been playing that. Like one example for me, which just literally I was going crazy the other night, was I've been playing Malik Monk at low ownership for like 6 straight slates I played in my single entry lineup, and like every single time he shot 5% from the field. Finally didn't have him the other night, and he had like a triple double. So yeah, just be funny and throw some good tweets out there.
Okay, it's driving me crazy that I can't think of his name. There's a guy who I'm friends with on Twitter who posts trash gifs all the time. Do you know what I'm talking about? I can't. For some reason I'm blanking on his name as we're doing this week. Are you familiar with the Twitter poster who always posts trash gifs about different players night to night? Because I'd say he's, for me, one of the top Twitter tilters, and I don't know why. Just right now I'm blanking on his name while we're on the show.
I don't think I'm familiar with that guy, but if you find out after the show, let me know who that is. I'll take him a follow.
I'm gonna keep looking for him because or just trying to think of his name, because it's I interact with him all the time on Twitter. He's a friend of mine on Twitter, and for some reason I'm just blanking on his name right now. Okay, in lieu of finding that answer, I'm just gonna ask you the questions that I like to close out these shows with. Can you tell me about your favorite win or win celebration?
Sure. So, I mean, for me, I really don't celebrate much after a big win. I would say probably my go-to after I have like a really big night would be treat myself to Chipotle. That's one thing I always talk about. I get that a lot. Talk about it in my Discord. But yeah, I really don't like. I'm not gonna go out and like party after a big win or anything. I'm more so chill. Like maybe get some good food and sit back and relax. So I've never had one of those stories where I'm out and like celebrating with friends or something, and we're taking shots because I just won big or something. Now I'm more low key about it. Maybe get some food, some Chipotle, which I eat all the time, by the way. And yeah, so no crazy like big win stories for me.
I gotta be honest, you don't look to me like somebody who eats a lot of Chipotle.
Really?
Kind of surprised to hear that you. I mean, you don't have the build of somebody who I associate with a lot of Chipotle eating. But
It's my go-to. It's also like right by my apartment, so I would say probably a couple times a week. I even have, I should have wore it, but I have a Chipotle shirt where I have like my order on it. You can like get them like custom, so that's something I'll wear a good amount as well.
Okay. The user I was trying to think of on Twitter was the Check 182.
Oh, I think I have. I don't know if I follow him, but I think I have seen that.
He calls in his Twitter bio, Trash Man, play like trash, get a GIF, DFS lover and pro tilter. So he and I would consider him one of my top 5 tilters on Twitter.
Okay.
With the constant trash cans. He's definitely up there as well.
I'm gonna have to give him a follow back and see if he's consistent with it. He'll be right.
Oh, he's consistent with. Yeah, I put him right up there with you and Jesse and Jake. Yeah,
Yep.
he's in that list. Okay, DK, where can people find you? Thanks a lot for coming on, by the way. And where can people find you if they want to look for you after the show?
Yeah, so YouTube, it's DKDFS, and I'll be doing, I do the shows the night before. So if you ever want like a first kind of look, break down the slate, I'll have that on my YouTube. I'll be doing streams from time to time there as well. And then just on Twitter, it's DK__DFS. But those are the 2 main ones. I don't really have any other social media platforms. I mean, I'm trying to get into TikTok a little bit, but I'm too old for it. I feel like I've been trying to make the short form content. And it's hard for me. So mainly focused on YouTube and Twitter.
All right. At DK__DFS on Twitter. Look for the guy with the Paris Hilton shout out at the top of his Twitter profile. All right. Thanks a lot for coming on, DK, for High Stakes episode 30. A lot of fun to have you on. Thanks to Mike Lawrence for producing as always. You can find Mike on Twitter at Awesemo. And thank you for listening. Hope you have a great weekend. You'll be able to find episode 31 of High Stakes 2 weeks from today on Friday afternoon. Have a great weekend.